Welcome to The Business That Pays with Adam Tolliver from Artisan Financial Strategies, where we mind the business that pays you. In this podcast, we empower successful families and business owners to make informed decisions about their finances through courageous conversations. Through his expertise as a practicing investment advisor representative with Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor, Adam teaches you how to create a wealth ecosystem by combining a practical technical framework with your personal, family, and community values. Join us for this journey where Adam normalizes sustainable wealth building and gives you the keys to make courageous, proactive financial decisions.
You've decided to find a financial advisor. A wise decision. Now, how do you go about doing that? Well, the answer to that question is right here. This is the Business That Pays podcast, and host Adam Tolliver of Artisan Financial Strategies offers some guidance on what to ask when interviewing potential advisors. I'm Patrice Sikora. Adam, to many people, this may not seem like a huge decision, but when you come right down to it, the individual you choose will hopefully be a partner as you move through life.
That's exactly right, Patrice. And when you think about that, the area of life that you're working with a financial advisor in, ultimately, the decisions that you make with that person and how that relationship works can have a tremendous impact on your family, not just now, but for generations to come. The decision is a very important one and a very sensitive one. It's one that we at Artisan try to keep in mind when we're working with a brand new client, and just being grateful for the fact that they felt comfortable enough to make that decision with us.
And now there are questions you can ask as you're going through this vetting process, but they're really not that comfortable. For me anyway, we'll get to some where I felt extremely uncomfortable. But let's start out with qualifications. You sit down across from this person, you look at them and you say, so why are you doing this? And what are your qualifications? What are you looking for?
With qualifications, a big part of it is you want to know what their experience is, what their background education is. So where do they get their information from? And then another thing that's really important, especially in this day and age when it comes to understanding qualifications, is are you beholden to any sort of standard or specific body that can hold you accountable for what you are sharing, the information that you're sharing, and the recommendations that you're making? These days, especially as more and more people take on the entrepreneurial spirit, it's very easy to go out onto the internet and find different people with different titles: consultant, coach, advisor, etc. And so this question, asking what are your qualifications, allows you to get very specific about what someone has done in order to be qualified to give you financial advice. And this may include their licenses and registrations, their professional designations, their years of work experience, what type of clients they work with. And you can also, for those who are licensed and registered as financial advisors or investment advisor representatives, they may be a registered representative, whatever it is. If you want to check Form ADV, their Form ADV, so you can look that up online. It's public. You can look for FINRA and go to broker check so that you can actually see what people's individual records are and what type of registrations and licenses they may have.
That Form ADV, how do you look that up?
So you would go to advisorinfo.sec.gov. And once you go on there, you can type their first and last name in, and you'll get results of pretty much any advisor that has a name close to theirs. Once you go on there, you'll be able to see what their actual registrations are. So are they an investment advisor? Are they a broker? Whatever the case may be. But you'll also be able to see how many disclosures, if any, they have on their records. You'll be able to see their years of experience. And you can also look at who they're registered with, their public business addresses, and how many examinations and licenses they have.
All right, that's pretty comprehensive, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And the idea behind that is for transparency, to protect the consumer. That's something that you can do, again, either through advisorinfo.sec.gov, or through FINRA's broker check. If you just Google FINRA broker check, you'll be able to type in someone's name on that initial website that pops up, and you can get the exact same information.
Okay. Tell me about this word fiduciary. It's become very popular in the last couple of years. What does that mean?
So fiduciary means that an advisor is responsible for putting the interest of the client first, as opposed to just recommending what is suitable. That comes into play when you are thinking about how an advisor or professional is motivated. So how are they paid? And oftentimes, if you are in a position where someone is not a fiduciary, does not have that responsibility, it could be possible for them to shade you towards things that are going to pay them more, as opposed, which could still be suitable for you, right? But that's not a standard of a fiduciary, where your responsibility as an advisor is to put the client's needs first. So giving them the best possible scenario for them, as opposed to what's just suitable.
Is there training you have to go through for that?
There is, and typically you are qualified as such by going through your different examinations. So for instance, once you've taken the Series 65 and the Series 66 to become an investment advisor representative, that holds you to a fiduciary standard. If you are a CFP, you are also held, a certified financial planner, you're held to a fiduciary standard. And for advisors who are not legally held to a fiduciary standard, they may still work based on a fiduciary standard, but they have to completely disclose any conflicts of interest that may exist in their relationships as they're taking you through the planning process. A conflict of interest might be if they belong to a certain broker dealer and will receive commissions in their compensation for placing a different product or account with a certain dealer.
Okay. Now, this next question, this is one that I felt very uncomfortable asking. And to be honest, I'm not sure I got the right answer or a complete answer from at least one person that I talked to. How do you get paid?
Yes, this is important, of course, because again, understanding how people get paid can help you understand what their motivation is, how it also brings context to their process. So did we just go through a process that was purposely steering me towards the way that you get paid? Did we go through a process that's actually comprehensive and helping me to figure out what the best moves to make for myself and my family are? Getting a straight answer about that, of course, is very important. Transparency in the way that someone is compensated is very important. And for the most part, advisors are paid in three ways. One is going to be that they are fee-based or fee only, meaning that you pay them a fee to do a plan. And that may be a comprehensive plan, that may be a very specific plan. So you may just be paying for retirement planning, or you may be paying for a full comprehensive plan where they're doing everything from estate planning to risk management to retirement planning to investment management, et cetera. You pay a fee, you get a service in return. Another way that advisors can get paid, and not all advisors are paid this way, but can be paid on commissions, which would be they take you through a process. Through that process, there may be recommendations that come of it. So there may be insurance recommendations, there may be investment and rollover for your 401k recommendations, et cetera. And that advisor may get paid a commission based on where those items are placed or those accounts are opened. The third way is there will be fees on assets under management or an investment management fee if you open an investment account with an advisor. Some advisors are paid on all three. Some advisors are paid on one of the three or two of the three. But again, that's a conversation that you want to have with the advisor, and that advisor should feel comfortable and should be transparent with you about those ways that they are paid.
And don't be afraid to ask, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not afraid. I was just uncomfortable.
It can be uncomfortable, but it's important to remember that any reputable advisor who is a professional has no problem answering that question for you.
What's your process like? How are you going to help me? How do you make me a client?
this is all about the transparency again. And you're going to hear that word a lot in this episode, but we want to make sure that you have an understanding of how the decisions are made for what recommendations you receive from your advisor. And sometimes, depending on the type of person you are, you may or may not want to be like super deep in the weeds and get all the details on this, but it's important for you to understand, because what you don't want is to go to someone and pay them for advice, and then you turn over all your information. They put it in a black box and then spit it out, and they go, do this. Part of the reason for that, of course, is yes, you don't want to be taken advantage of. And again, if you're working with a reputable advisor, especially in this day and age, with the amount of regulation that there is, that's not really the biggest concern, I would say. The biggest concern is it's very difficult to stick to a plan if you don't understand why it's in place.
Yes. Oh, absolutely yes.
If you actually want to execute and get the results that you signed up for, you need to be very connected to that process and how those recommendations came about, because it'll help remind you why you're doing what you're doing.
And you have the ability to say, wait a minute, that's not what I had in mind.
Exactly. And it's important to be able to do that, to have that back and forth conversation, because an advisor is really there to be an objective accountability partner who has some technical knowledge and expertise that you do not. But ultimately, this is still your plan if you're doing a financial plan, and it's your life, your money, your family. That doesn't mean that you're going to agree or take every recommendation that your advisor makes, but you do want to be able to have a good, intelligent conversation and know the right questions to ask. And you can do that much better if you understand the process that you're being taken through when you're making a plan.
Adam, do you have to like your financial advisor?
I
Seriously, though.
You know what? That's going to vary from person to person. That's definitely going to vary from person to person. I would say it is very helpful to have a good relationship with your financial advisor. Personally, I feel that it is such an intimate working relationship. When you hire a financial advisor, this is a person that you are likely going to call when some of the closest people to you pass away, when people are ill, when you get a promotion, when you get a new job, when you sell a house, when you buy a new house, when a new baby is born. These are very intimate subjects. Yes, it's business, but it's a very personal business. It's a very intimate business. And in my experience, I think that it helps and goes a long way tremendously if you get along very well with your financial advisor.
Now, here's another question, perhaps from left field, and I'm sorry for that, but do financial advisors have any training in interpersonal communication?
Yes. And what I will say, in the world of financial services, there are all types of personalities, and there are absolutely the type of people in the business in general who do not care to get into any of the sticky feelings. There are those people, and typically what they end up doing is being like an internal team member for someone like me who is all about the relationships. So they may never talk to clients because they have no interest, but they are perfectly comfortable looking at spreadsheets and charts all day and plugging in numbers and running scenarios. They have all of the same qualifications. They just don't want to do that people thing, right? But I do think that for anyone who is a client-facing advisor, it is a critical portion of what you do. And most of us have gotten some kind of training for it, either formally where we work, or, where we got our formal training, or we actively seek continuing to grow in that area over time.
All right. How often should you be meeting with your financial advisor? And do you ask that, or does it just get handed to you?
Yep. So that's another question that you want to ask is, how will we work together? What does that look like? Yeah, I hire you. We go through this process, but what happens after that? Like, you got my money this time. you make some recommendations, but then when do I hear from you? Is it once a year? Is it twice a year? That's going to vary for every advisor and every client. Most advisors will have sort of a templated track for what's regular maintenance for how often I need to see my clients. And they'll have different rules for themselves on how they run their business about how often they can actually afford to be able to see different clients. Understanding what that relationship will look like for you as a consumer, as a client, is really important, because just because that's their model doesn't mean that it's the best fit for you. And you have to examine that. So if someone tells you, hey, we're going to talk to each other 4 times a year with one major planning review, which is that's what my model looks like. So at least once a year, we're doing a deep dive. And then I'm touching base with you every quarter of the year. So that 4 touches, 1 is the annual meeting. But for some people, they may need a lot more attention. And usually an advisor can accommodate based on a few different factors. It may be based on the type of engagement. So it may be a higher fee structure to be able to accommodate, because ultimately advisors as a business, as a practice, we are essentially doling out our time. Most of us build our fees based on a few different things, but a lot of it has to do with like hourly capacity for ourselves and for the rest of our team. So how much do we have to pay in order to maintain a profitable relationship with a good client? That, again, that can vary from person to person. But what you want to understand is, if I need this relationship to look like this, are you capable of accommodating that? Some people are very hard on it, like, hey, this is what you get. Others are a lot more flexible. And so ultimately you want to have that understanding when you go into a relationship.
Is there an expected turnaround time in communication, or is that, as you say, going to just depend on the client relationship?
It absolutely depends. In professional spaces, a lot of people want to hold themselves to 24 to 48 hours on email communications. They may want a quicker turnaround on phone call communications. And that, again, is important, because you need to be able to know, like, hey, if I've got an emergency, or if this is just a standard communication, like, how do I make it clear to you that I need to get a hold of you right away?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That just goes back to knowing, like, hey, what is this going to be like when we work together? Like, how is this actually going to work? And sometimes it means telling your advisor, like, hey, the best way to communicate with me is through email, or no, I need you to pick up the phone and call me, because if you send me an email, I might not see it for 4 months. Making sure that you are working with someone who has a communication style and can actually adhere to that in a way that's going to be suitable for you.
And then we go back to something you said just a little bit ago. Some people prefer to work in the back office. Do you have a staff? Does your advisor have a staff? Is that an important question?
Yes, that's an important question to ask. So do you work with a team, or do you have a staff supporting you? Hopefully at that point, when you ask that question, the advisor is prepared just to tell you who's on their team and what their roles are. So there may be other licensed advisors in the practice who don't work with clients. There may be other advisors in the practice who work with different types of clients. For instance, in our practice at Artisan, Meredith works with female breadwinners. Most of her clients are high achieving women in the C-suite. I work with minority business owners, Black business owners, and work a lot more with millennial professionals, right? We, of course, have a lot of the exact same core competencies, but we're used to working with certain type of people.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what that provides is, because we have those same core competencies, we can cover each other in certain areas where we need to. So we're a 2 advisor practice. Eventually we'll be growing to 3 and 4 advisor practice. But then we also have a director of operations who has a ton of experience in advisory. She's been in the business for a little over 15 years now, and that's Sandy Jones. And so she's got experience in actually putting together our financial plans and running operations. And then we've got Linda Powell, who is relatively new to our team, but she's amazing, and she helps out with Sandy on operations. So that's how we get our coverage, to make sure that a lot of the administrative things and a lot of the service things that we have on a regular basis are taken care of. Every practice is going to look a little bit different. Some are going to be a lot more lean because they don't necessarily have the same type of needs that a practice like ours has. And then some are going to be scaled up much larger with a much bigger team, because that's what makes sense for them and the clients that they serve.
And speaking of a team and working with all kinds of clients, you're no expert when it comes to accounting. You're not an attorney. Where do you go for that kind of help when your client needs it?
One of the first things that we're always doing when we bring in a new potential client is we're gathering the information to understand what other advisors are already in the picture. This question from a client standpoint or a consumer standpoint is you want to know, if you're about to enter into a relationship with an advisor, do they play well with others? Can you play nicely with others? Because again, there are so many different areas of advice and expertise that exists that a client may need throughout their life. Different stages of life are going to have different inflection points where something becomes very important. As financial advisors, we like to think of ourselves as a quarterback. I would definitely argue that accountants probably feel the same way. But the point of being a quarterback is that you know that you're on a team. For clients, that means that I am one player on your team, and that team may consist of an estate planning attorney. It may consist of an insurance agent. It may consist of an accountant. It may consist of all of these things and more. Knowing that your advisor has an active role in making sure that you're at the center of the conversation and everyone isn't working in silos, because that's how a lot of redundant work can be done. Unnecessary work can be done. Unnecessary dollars and efforts can be spent. And then it's also how a lot of gaps can exist, because you don't necessarily know how what one person is doing impacts what you're doing. So you could be very, very competent and excellent in your silo of expertise, but if you don't understand the context of everything else that's going on, it inhibits your ability to perform at the best possible level for your client.
And do you constantly look for more people outside your silo who could help you?
Yes, you keep sort of a running Rolodex, and you develop relationships with other professionals, because oftentimes you will run into clients who need the work but don't have an existing relationship. So you want to be able to make referrals, and you also want to be able to give them options. So you want to have a deep bench of people that you actually trust, that you know their work. Of course, you don't want anybody that's going to embarrass or hurt your client.
Right, most definitely. We've gone through a lot here. How can someone reach you, Adam, if they have questions or if they just want to rehash a few things?
Yes, absolutely. You can reach me at artisanfsonline.com.
And that's Adam Tolliver of Artisan Financial Strategies. Listen to all the episodes of Adam's podcast, The Business That Pays, and be alerted when new ones are added by subscribing with the subscribe button. Also, make sure you share with friends and colleagues with the share button. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to Business That Pays. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Artisan Financial Strategies or Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial professional provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment strategies.
Adam Tolliver, registered representative offering securities through New York Life Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a licensed insurance agency. 1125 Cambridge Square, Suite C, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. 404-210-9311. Financial advisor offering investment advisory services through Eagle Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. New York Life Securities, LLC, and Eagle Strategies, LLC are New York Life companies. Artisan Financial Strategies, LLC, is not owned or operated by New York Life Securities, LLC, or its affiliates. Neither Artisan Financial Strategies, LLC, nor its advisors provide tax, legal, or accounting advice.